Hi, I'm Jessie Prey.
And I'm Andy Cassette. Welcome to Love Murder, where we unravel the darkest tales of romance turned deadly.
Our episodes are long-form, narrative-driven, and deeply researched. Perfect for the true crime aficionados seeking stories beyond the headlines.
Like the chilling case of Blanche Taylor Moore, the so-called Black Widow who left a trail of poisoned lovers.
Or the shocking murders of Chad Shelton and Dwayne Johnson, where family ties masked a sinister plot.
Subscribe to Love Murder on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.
I'm Alice.
And I'm Brett.
And this is the Prosecutors Legal Briefs. Welcome back to the Prosecutors Legal Briefs. I'm your host, Alice, and I'm joined, as always, by my bricktastic co-host, Brett.
Bricktastic. I don't know what that means, but I'll take it. Tastic usually is a good thing. So
Tastic is always awesome. And obviously today we're talking about the bricks. The building bricks, Legos. So I went with bricktastic because I feel like does anyone else have a Lego room in their house?
Man.
We have a room. I don't have
the building
a
bricks of
recording
childhood,
studio.
one might say.
But I have a Lego room because, I have children of varying ages and the smaller ones will choke on said Legos. So we have a room for Legos and they have to close the doors and keep the Legos in there.
I would love to hear people's Lego stories. When I was growing up, Legos are much more complicated now, I feel like, than they were when I was growing up. Like, there were Star Wars Legos, but they were too expensive.
Those are
Spoiler
expensive
for me and my family. So I had like the typical sort of the castles and the pirate ships. And so I had my pirate ship Legos and I had my castle Legos. And I would create these stories, these dramatic stories. I mean, really, I was writing Pirates of the Caribbean before it was famous. And so these like dramatic stories, and I would fight them all out. And they would be separate. There were the pirates stories and there were the, I had Game of Thrones. I was writing Game of Thrones on the one hand. And
Pirates why you're such a good storyteller now.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you became a lawyer because when they stole the rights to those stories, you're like, I shall vindicate myself.
Exactly. And then judges were like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Okay, so you guys may not know what we're going to talk about today, but I just have to tell a little vignette of how interesting you may find today's story. So when I started researching this, I was like, why does this story sound so familiar? I feel like I just had a very long conversation about this, but I didn't have this conversation with Brett. Where did I hear about this story about Legos? And you'd think I'd remember because, again, I have a room full of Legos in my house. And then I remembered someone found this story so interesting, they cornered me at a party and told it to me for a straight hour. A straight hour. Couldn't get away. Every time I tried to duck away, I got more in details. But I will say, as I wanted to just be at the party, the story was fascinating. Couldn't get it out of my mind. So we are talking about it today.
Yes. And look, I mean, this one, a lot of you have asked us to cover this. I was like, what in the world are you even talking about? From a legal perspective, it's really interesting. This is like a bar review or bar exam prompt on property and contracts and franchisee relationships. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff going on here, not to mention the criminal element that also creeps in, and First Amendment stuff. I mean, it's wild, this case. So we thought, hey, why not? We'll talk about it. So if you don't know what we're talking about, why are we talking about Legos? Well, this controversy has erupted in recent months. It's all about a Lego set, an incredibly valuable Lego set, and a contract to sell that, a corporation which may have stolen the Lego set, YouTuber who got involved and has now been criminally charged for the things he was doing about the Lego set. So, wild story. We'll dive in. So back in 2023, a man named Brian Manziel, he enters into a consignment agreement with Crystal Law, who is the owner of a Bricks and Minifigs franchise in Kaiser, Oregon, which is just outside of Salem. Now, consignment, for those of you who don't know, I mean, probably most of you who've either been to a consignment store. I bet Alice is all about consignment. You all about consignment?
Love consignment.
Alice?
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, well, tell us.
You
explain consignment then.
Okay, so Mrs. Brett and I go consignment shopping all the time. Consignment shop is just secondhand store, right? But there are nice consignment stores. There's like your typical Goodwill that people know of, Salvation Army, Goodwill. But there's also like high-end consignment stores where you have like a lot of children's clothing, for example, because children grow out of their clothes very fast, so they may wear their very expensive, special smocked outfit one time before they outgrow it, but it's still a perfectly good outfit. And so you'll buy it at a consignment store for a fraction of the retail price. Toys, really anything could be consignment. And people make a living on this, especially now, really, with the explosion of social media. People will show how they like go to Goodwill or Salvation Army and then consign it online through different apps or even just like on Instagram and TikTok and make factors more than they paid for it. So consignment is simply secondhand shopping.
Yeah. And basically the people who own it are making an agreement with the store, and the store has the storefront. I mean, think like antique shops, things like that. They have this whole setup, and people come in and they buy it, and then the person who put it on consignment, they get a portion of the proceeds. The store owner gets a portion of the proceeds. Everybody's happy. Everybody's happy. And
that's a great point, Brett. In this particular instance, because there's such a market for not paying retail, stores who don't sell all of their wares will consign to another store because it takes up money to hold it on their spaces, right? They have to have shelves filled with things that sell. And so in addition to just secondhand, you also have, think of it kind of like home goods. Home goods is not exactly consignment, but everything there is brand new. It's just usually a season later and it hasn't sold from the store that it originally came from.
Okay. So this Bricks and Minifigs. Now, Bricks and Minifigs, they sell all sorts of gaming stuff, Lego stuff. I mean, that's sort of what they're into, right? I mean, that's the kind of thing that they do. And so Brian, over the decades, Brian and his elderly father, who was in his 80s, they had amassed a collection of Star Wars Legos. And those Legos were valued at upwards of $200,000. So they had these really nice Lego sets. They were like encased. So it's almost like a Lego diorama or something. And as I was saying, I remember all the different Star Wars things growing up, like the Death Star and a Star Destroyer and all these other, and they were incredibly expensive just to buy at retail. And, a lot of the rarer ones, that kind of thing, they can be really valuable for collectors. And so really awesome, really cool, exactly what you would want if you're a collector of Legos. And so he goes to Bricks and Minifigs. They have a lot of people who are coming in to buy Legos. He says, I got $200,000 worth of Legos. How about you sell them at your store? I'll take my cut. You'll make some money. Everybody will be happy. And she says, that sounds amazing. And anything that wasn't sold would just be returned to Brian.
So this all worked great. But in November of 2024, B&M took over the franchise relationship, cutting out Crystal and taking over operation of the store. Now, according to Manziel, in doing so, they also took over the remainder of the collection. What happened next is disputed, but it has been reported that at this point, corporate refused to allow Manziel to inspect his property, nor did they provide a full accounting or, critically, return the property that was unsold. So this is a big deal, right? Before it's like, if you don't sell it, you just get to keep it. And here, corporate is not telling him what he has and won't let him inspect what it is, and he certainly isn't getting anything back.
I mean, this is very strange, right? Like, you walk into a McDonald's and you expect anything that happens in that McDonald's is going to be supported by corporate somewhere, right? Here you have Bricks and Minifigs. You have this franchisor, and they're entering into this agreement with him. Okay, the franchisor-franchisee relationship between Crystal and Bricks and Minifigs, guess that didn't work out. They've now come in. She's gone, but I didn't sign the contract with Crystal Law, seller of Legos. Signed a contract with the franchise for Bricks and Minifigs. I don't really care who owns it or who runs it. And now corporate's taking over and they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. we don't know what you're talking about. And anything that's Star Wars in this store is ours, not yours. And this begins this problem. And this is such a small potatoes controversy at this point. You've got sort of a disagreement between a customer and a corporate entity. And this, you can imagine this would happen. I mean, consignment's a little weird because they're coming in. They are going to say that Crystal Law was just a terrible franchise owner. She didn't keep good books. She was stealing money. I mean, they accuse her of everything under the sun. I don't know if any of that's true or not, but that's what they're saying about her. So they're coming in to take over and like fix this place up. And in doing so, they are at least standoffish to Brian. Now, I think probably what they would say is, we didn't know what was true and what was false. We didn't know what she had done and what she hadn't done. We didn't know what agreement she'd entered into. This guy's telling us he's got $200,000 worth of Legos. You know, we're not just going to give him every Lego in the store. That's sort of their position. But it very quickly spirals out of control. So enter a YouTuber named Reckless Ben Schneider, who, I mean, props to this guy. Whenever he branded himself, he was like, I'm going to be honest. I'm
reckless.
You know, yeah, it's like
DBA, doing business as Reckless Ben.
Exactly. That's what he was. He was doing business as Reckless Ben. And he comes into the picture and he gets involved in this. He gets a hold of this story. You know, at this point, Brian is starting to tell his story to various Lego collectors. Like, can you believe this thing happened to me? Like, what's going on? Like, why are they keeping my Legos? Why aren't they giving my Legos back to me? So he comes in the picture. And according to Bricks and Minifigs, he lived up to that name. And he published a series of YouTube videos accusing Bricks and Minifigs of essentially stealing Manziel's property. Taking these properties and stealing them. We're going to get into exactly what he did later on. The controversy explodes. It becomes an internet sensation. Everybody's talking about it. And it gets so bad that Bricks and Minifigs, who at this point have replaced the old franchisee, Crystal, or franchisor, whatever she is. Franchisee. She's a franchisee? She's a franchisee. Crystal, with some new guys who came in, they were going to run it. They're like, we got to close this place. So they announced this store is going to be permanently closed. But, and this is where it gets wild, they aren't done. Okay, so we did the Afro Man case. And we talked about in the Afro Man case how sometimes, even if you think you are legitimately wounded, a lawsuit is not the answer because it can just make things worse. Well, Bricks and Minifigs did not learn that lesson. Nobody's listening to the podcast ever at Bricks and Minifigs. People need to start listening because they sue. And they don't just sue Reckless Ben, who maybe, you know, they have a legitimate case against. I mean, hard to say. They also sue Brian Manziel. And they accuse the two of them, they have like RICO counts, they have all this stuff, of having a coordinated campaign to defame them, to harass them, to engage in trespass, and to engage in extortion. So they have gone all out. It's like, this is the lawyer equivalent of just dropping a nuclear bomb right on everyone who's involved in this case.
So to give a little perspective, this is going to be disputed, but we're talking about like $200,000 worth of stuff. We're not talking about like $200 million worth of Legos, right? So in the lawsuit world, relatively small potatoes, because to file a lawsuit is going to cost you probably at least $50,000. Like, that's on the low end, at least, just to get like something filed. A defamation lawsuit, and we spoke about this in the Afro Man case, these kinds of cases actually are very, very, everyone says it all the time. I'm going to sue you for defamation, but actually to win on a defamation lawsuit is incredibly difficult, and they are very discovery heavy cases. And so if you were to go to a defamation lawyer, I do a little bit of defamation. The first thing we tell you is cool. So sorry your feelings were hurt. Even if legitimately, just so you know, you're not getting out of a defamation lawsuit under $1 to $2 million on the low end, no matter what kind of claims you're putting out there, no matter how much you're in the right, because they're discovery heavy. And there are anti-slap laws in most states that basically protect free speech and let people say whatever crazy thing they want and prevent these sorts of defamation lawsuits that they see as harassing. So just so you know, this type of case, very costly to even bring and even harder to succeed upon, which is why it's a legal nuclear bomb.
And can we just remind everyone, this isn't private citizen, bricks, minifigs. This is a corporation, a public corporation. And that means most likely under New York Times versus Sullivan, you're going to have to show actual malice. You would have to show that this campaign was driven by they just hate bricks and minifigs. They want to bring them down, and they're willing to lie about it.
And they know it's right. And they know that it's untrue, what they are saying. Like, it's a really high standard where it can't just be, they might think they have to kind of know that it's untrue. So let's say that he gets an accounting and he sees for a fact that, like, he actually didn't get stolen anything, and they still go on this campaign. That's going to be your actual malice.
Right. Or he never actually even consigned the stuff there. He didn't like the guys who started it in college. And he's like, I'm going to bring these guys down. I mean, it literally has to be something like that. We saw that once again in the Afro Man case, where the police are trying to sue him for defamation. And it's this whole incidence where you got to prove that when he says you stole my money, he knows it's not true. Where he believes that. Whether he was right or wrong, he honestly believed those cops stole his money. Well, Brian Manziel, I haven't seen any allegation that he doesn't absolutely believe that Bricks and Minifigs took his collection and won't give it back to him. So already you're starting in this massive hole. And yet, over $200,000, which a lot of money to me, a lot of money to Alice. Is it a lot of money to an entity that has 300 locations? I mean, I don't think so. It sounds like the kind of thing you just write off on your taxes, especially if you're dealing with this issue where you've got a failed franchise, essentially, and who knows what kind of liability she's racked up, and you want to maintain goodwill in the community. So maybe don't do this, but they do. And so I never heard of Reckless Ben Schneider.
I have now.
I have now.
I have now. Right. So this is a YouTuber, right? And look, we also know of situations where people file lawsuits because they're going to flex and they're going to follow through, but that's kind of it. The lawsuit dies on the vine, or they've made their point because they filed the lawsuit. Not so in this case. So this is very recent. On March 11th, 2026, the police accused Reckless Ben and others, remember there's a RICO charge, racketeering charge here, of conspiracy. They accused Schneider and all these other people of repeated targeting of the home of a Bricks and Minifigs employee or franchise owner, and Reckless Ben was arrested. Now, prosecutors later filed misdemeanor charges, including stalking, targeted residential picketing, criminal trespass, and disorderly conduct. Reckless Ben disputes that characterization and frames his actions as investigation and service of process efforts.
I mean,
or I'd say maybe a little bit of First Amendment. Like,
that's the thing. Yeah, that's going to come in too.
Picketing and, like, you know, standing outside being like, corporates suck. You know, that sounds like First Amendment to me.
This case, unless it gets resolved, which it needs to be, has a chance of actually being a major First Amendment case. Because everybody's they've lost their minds. I mean, everybody's doing these crazy things. Look, we're going to talk about what Reckless Ben did. You know, we've certainly in the true crime world seen some YouTubers who went insane and did insane things related to cases that have now been charged.
But they were not arrested the way Reckless Ben was.
Well, some of them were, but it was a lot worse than what Reckless Ben was doing. I mean,
I was thinking of some that should have been, and they never were.
Yeah, that's true. Reckless Ben, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, you're going to see what he did.
He's like a nuisance on YouTube. Like,
exactly. It's not like, for instance, he didn't. You know, you have that one YouTuber who accused the professor of killing the Idaho kid, said she was a psychic, she saw it in a vision, and all that other stuff. I mean, that's pretty rough, right? And she ends up losing a defamation lawsuit, legitimately. But this seems a little different. But anyways, at the same time, all this is going on. So this is all very recent, like in the last week or so. At some point, you know, I just got to imagine that, like, the head of the communications department or the head of the legal department, he was like 6 months ago, he was like, I'm going to hike the Appalachian Trail. I've always wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail. And I mean, I work for a Lego selling company. What could happen? I'll be out of communication for a little while. No big deal. He goes and hikes the Appalachian Trail. And he's like making his way down. He reaches the final location in Georgia. You know, he pulls out his cell phone, his work cell phone. He hadn't looked at it the whole time because he's like communing with nature. And he sees like 20,000 emails, 30,000 texts. And he's like, oh my God, what have you done? And he calls corporate and he goes, I don't know who decided this was a good idea, but we have got to fix this, and we've got to fix it right now, because Bricks and Minifigs did all this stuff, but it became very clear very quickly that this was not going to work out for them. Like, if this was a lawsuit that was just, we'll shut these people up and move on, or no big deal, we're a big corporation, like, we'll silence these guys. That's not what happened. And in fact, I would say their entire business is threatened by this, by the massive millions of dollars of bad will, loss of goodwill, bad publicity they've gotten for this. So they're now in crisis communications mode. They are being painted as villains, and they got to figure out what to do. So the first thing they do is they're like, it's all Crystal Law's fault. And they point the fingers at her. They say, hey, consignment was never part of our franchise model. That's not the way we do business. She wasn't authorized to enter into this deal. And by the way, turns out much of the collection had already been sold before the takeover, so we don't even have that much of it. And they also said that as they're investigating this, they're discovering all these inconsistent spreadsheets. They're discovering point of sale data that seems to show a large chunk of money in sales for this property that went to Crystal Law, but that was underreported to Manziel. So they're trying to present themselves as, hey, we're just trying to figure out what's going on here. Like, don't look at us. It's really the franchisee's fault. And that's where it's sat. We'll tell you what happened last week in a minute. But before we do that, let's talk some about the legal claims in this case.
Running a business means you're always reachable until you're not. And the moment you miss that call, that text, that follow-up, a competitor is the one that picks it up. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the business phone system built so you never miss an opportunity. I work at a law firm. I know there are way too many calls coming in for me to be able to pick up every single one of them, but a missed call is a missed opportunity. Now, with Quo, all your calls, texts, and voicemails live in one place, so anyone on your team can pick up a conversation to see the full history and respond fast. Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by over 90,000 businesses who rely on it to stay reachable and look professional every day.
Set up in minutes on any device. Keep your existing number and add teammates as you grow. No IT, no hassle. Quo integrates with the tools your team already uses like HubSpot, Zapier, Claude, and more, helping you save time, stay organized, and spend less time chasing information between systems. Money is on the line. Always say hello with Quo. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/prosecutors. That's QUO.com/prosecutors.
Yeah, so this isn't just a wild story or what not to do when you're a corporation faced with really, really bad press. There are also really interesting legal issues here. So B&M has a number of problems from a legal point of view. First, it doesn't really matter whether the franchisee, Crystal Law, was specifically authorized to enter into this kind of contract. Under Oregon law, a principal can be bound when it has clothed the agent with apparent authority. In other words, when the principal, which is the corporation here, permits the agent, Crystal Law, to appear to have authority to bind it, they can, right? You can imagine why this is it. Like, you work for them. If they're entering into contracts, the people entering into contracts with Crystal Law don't know that they're acting out of authority. So because they are clothed with the authority to do so, Oregon law says, I'm sorry, you have to be bound by what your agent did. So here, Oregon's Supreme Court frames the issue as whether the principal's conduct, reasonably interpreted, caused the third party to believe the principal consented to the apparent agent acting for it. So if you walk into a franchise and contract to do business with it, that seemed like it's in line with what they tend to do, you're protected. So apparent authority is different from actual authority. Crystal Law may not have had actual authority if B&M is correct, but it doesn't matter under Oregon law because they had to overcome the fact that Crystal Law has apparent authority.
And you can see why that is. I mean, so much, and we hardly ever talk about these areas of law because usually we're talking about murder and all this other stuff, criminal law. This is really civil law. So much of civil law, there's law and equity. the old law and equity. And there's the law that's sort of the rules and the things we do. And then there's equity, which is more about fairness and protecting people and ensuring that justice is done. And there's a combination of those two in the American legal system, the British legal system, the common law, and everything else. So much of property law, contract law is meant to protect the consumer, to protect the person entering into the contract against being whipsawed by a corporate entity. We give corporations all sorts of protections, all sorts of legal protections, protections against lawsuits and everything else. But one thing we ask of them is, you're not going to take advantage of someone who just walks in the store and they have no idea. They walk in, they see bricks and minifigs on the storefront, and they see bricks and minifigs, trade dress, and they see, the corporate number if you have a problem on the desk, and they see all this other stuff, and they think, I am dealing with bricks and minifigs through this person. I'm not dealing with an independent company that has licensed the name, right? And so they expect, when I enter into this contract with you, to do the thing you do, which is to sell bricks of Lego. I can expect that the corporation is going to stand behind that. Now, look, if he walked in and said, hey, I was going to build a house and I bought all these concrete bricks to build it, and I'm not going to build the house anymore. The name of your store is Bricks and Minifigs, so I just assume I can sell my concrete bricks through you. And Crystal Law was like, sure, why not? You can imagine a judge saying, you couldn't have honestly believed that they were a broker of construction materials when you walked in and saw a bunch of Legos everywhere just because it said bricks in the name. Or if, she's selling cocaine out the back door. You can't sue Bricks and Minifigs if she really sold you baking soda, right? But if you're going in to sell Legos to the Legos selling people, then they're going to have to stand behind that, even if they didn't have this actual authority. And it's such an important distinction because people want to argue, and Bricks and Minifigs wants to say she didn't have authority to do this. That only goes so far. The apparent authority is the exception that can bind you to what your agents are doing, even if you didn't tell them they could do that, even if they couldn't do it. And that's what you see going on here. The funny thing about it, that's probably not even his best argument. That's a good argument, but it's probably not even his best argument. So if it just seems wrong to you that corporate would be able to walk in, seize property, and keep it, you're right. They can't do that. It is called conversion. You can't take someone's property. And in fact, if you're corporate and you walk into a situation like this, it's something called a bailment. You are under a expectation that you will preserve the property of others when you come into control of it until they can get it. There's something called a right of replevin, where they can, someone like Manziel could come in and say, hey, you have some of my property under a bailment. I would like to recover it. Give it back to me. And in this circumstance, they don't have what we would call a security interest in this. So imagine it was like a pawn shop situation where Crystal had given him a bunch of money up front for the Legos with the expectation that she would then sell the Legos. Well, in that circumstance, there would be a security interest in the Legos because money had been given to him and they had obtained a real interest in it. But in this consignment situation, where the money is only exchanged if the property is sold, they don't have a security interest in this. It's purely a bailment situation, and they're going to have to give it back to the owner. And they have a responsibility to protect the property of others and return it to the extent they can. So that's what should have happened here, even if what they really were trying to say to Brian was, hey, as soon as we figure out which of this property is yours, you got it, man. We're going to make sure you get it back. We're going to make you whole. That's essentially, I think, the position they want you to believe. It may even be true. It certainly is not what Brian is saying happened in this circumstance.
And you can imagine, this is like these rules. I know we're throwing around all these legal terms like replevin and bailment. This is really like a law school exam. But if you just zoom out for a second, what is this about? This is about equity. What's fair, right? Like if you bought a purse, from someone and they didn't know they had their life savings in cash stuffed into the pocket, right? Like you didn't, well, there's actually a question about whether that's theirs, but like the point is you don't get a gotcha just because he entered into an agreement with someone now you say who doesn't have authority but has apparent authority, and now you're like, this is all mine, suckers. You can't do that. So this is all about equity in the law, fairness, essentially. So what this means is that Mansell, if they have Mansell's property, they need to return it. They don't really have a legal leg to stand on at all here. So what about B&M's lawsuit? Frankly, this is the craziest part of the whole story. It's pretty obvious that Reckless Ben probably went too far in some of his actions, but it's equally obvious that Mansell has a legitimate claim against BAM. So those are kind of two separate things. Reckless Ben, First Amendment does have limits to it. Reckless Ben, I don't know why he got interested in this, but if you watch his videos, he probably went a little too far. That is separate and apart from whether Mansell has legitimate legal claims for what he believes is his property.
And legitimate doesn't even mean correct. Like, he could be wrong. Like, at the end of the day, maybe B&M proves, actually, we don't have any of your property, and you got all the money you deserved, and we didn't do anything wrong. They may be able to prove that, but it's not frivolous. What he's saying isn't obviously false, and he's able, under the First Amendment, to complain about this, and to complain about it publicly, and to point fingers at the people he thinks are messing with him. Just imagine if every time American Airlines screwed you over and you tweeted about it, they sued you. I mean, that's essentially what's happening here.
That's like so true.
The time that Hertz, I think it was Hertz, maybe it was Alamo, it was one of them. Sorry, whichever I'm slandering. I'm not, well, we'll just assume it was neither one. A rental car company. I rented a car, drove it to a hotel, went about my business. The rental car company shows up at the hotel, tells the valet guys, which is irritating me. I was like, valet guys, what are you doing? Told the valet guys, we're here to pick up this car. Took my car. I check out, go to the valet, and like, hey, here's my valet ticket. I'd like my car. And they're like, we gave it back to the rental car company. It's like, what? So you really I complain about that a lot on Twitter. And I had a legitimate claim, and they ended up giving me money for it. Well, under this world, they would have just sued me as soon as I said that for disparaging their business. And that's essentially what they did. It's just wild that they did that. So I don't know. And look, we've been talking about sort of the merits of this, but as we said, this was so ridiculously stupid from a PR perspective. Over $200,000. There's no one who's looked at this case who doesn't think that Bricks and Minifigs are the bad guys. Every single person who's looked at this case has thought that Bricks and Minifigs are the bad guys. Now they look even worse, and everybody's heard about it. I mean,
it's all I talked about at the party.
It is mind-blowing that over, honestly, the total was $200,000. Bricks and Minifigs says, it's probably worth about $100,000. He'd already sold a bunch of it. The minuscule amount of money we're talking about here for a corporation compared to the massive damage that's been done to this business, it can't be overstated. But what gets crazy here, we talked about how the First Amendment issues in this. So they sue. And they sue in Utah, which presumably is a friendly venue for them. And they actually get, from a Utah 4th Judicial Circuit judge, a temporary restraining order ordering Reckless Ben to take down his videos that they said were defamatory. This is a preliminary ruling saying that he has to silence himself. You don't get to do that. Like, I don't know where this judge got their law degree. I seriously question whether this person should be on the bench. This is like
so clearly prior restraint. Like, you don't have to be you don't have to be a defamation lawyer to like even know what that term is. That's all I remember from the bar exam about like First Amendment was like prior restraint and publishing ahead of time.
Yeah. You don't get to do that. The remedy for defamation is damages. You can get damages for it if it's not true. And then after a final adjudication, at that point, when everything's been decided and we have an actual ruling that these statements are false and defamatory, maybe then you can suppress the speech. But you don't get to do it at this point. And to suppress the speech at this point is major red flags flying all over the place. Just insane that we've reached this point.
So B&M, honestly, it's only getting more wild and crazy for them, right? They can't come off worse in this case. So they appear to all the world to be a corporate bully, right? They own 300 Bricks and Minifigs stores. They're a big corporate entity with millions of dollars, and they're going after some YouTuber over like $200,000 worth of Legos, right? They're unwilling to take responsibility for the actions of their franchisee. They keep throwing Crystal Law under the bus over all of this. That's bad enough. But then going on the offensive against Manziel because he dared to publicly speak about what appeared to him to be the theft of his property. This can't be stated enough. B&M sued Brian Manziel, a man that even B&M admits was taken advantage of by their franchisee Crystal. So whoever suggested this course of action for B&M should probably lose their job. Though given the crushing blow B&M has received to its public reputation, seriously, who would ever want to deal with these people? So it may not matter. But again, someone in their legal corporate totally messed up because Reckless Ben is separate from Manziel. They sued Manziel, a man who, by all accounts, by their own words, has been taken advantage of by their own agent who was clothed in their authority, who they say didn't have authority to enter into this contract. Maybe she didn't. But they're saying, you know what? She totally lied to you about what she sold anyway, so we actually have nothing. All of this is still their responsibility as the big corporate entity. And instead of saying mea culpa or even showing an accounting of why they're right, they turn around and sue a guy who collects Lego sets.
And look, there's clearly some echo chamber stuff going on here. You got this crazy Utah judge who did that. You got the Utah police are involved. Anybody want to guess where Bricks and Minifigs is headquartered? New York. No, I'm just kidding. Utah. They're in
really?
Provo, Utah. They started in Washington. They got bought by a couple guys from Utah. They moved their headquarters there. Got a lot of home team stuff going on in this whole situation. But I mean, I think we can all say they've lost the PR war. And you know how we absolutely know that? Because like 4 days ago, as we record this, Bricks and Minifigs publicly offered to meet with Brian, you know, the guy they're suing for like a bunch of different stuff, and return anything they still have. And not just anything they still have, that's his. They offered him every single Star Wars Lego set in that store. So if it's Star Wars and it's in the store, he can have it, whether you can prove it's his or not. And they offered to fully compensate him for anything unaccounted for, including what they claim was already sold and the former franchisee failed to pay. So they have completely capitulated. They basically done an extreme version of what they should have done in the beginning. They're like, you can have any Star Wars thing you want. Just go away. Just quit. Just stop. Stop killing us. Like, here. You want a Death Star? Here's a Death Star. Take a Death Star. Like, oh, you didn't have a Death Star? We don't care. You can have it anyway. You want another Death Star? Here's another one. Here's some Star Destroyers. Oh, you want Boba Fett? We'll find one. We'll buy one.
They should have done this in the beginning, by the way, guys.
It's just, the whole thing is wild. And if you want to read their take on the case, they've published a blog post called What We Presently Believe Actually Happened, a summary timeline of Bricks and Minifigs Salem store. So they have completely flipped. Like I said, that guy got off the Appalachian Trail and was like, we need to settle this as soon as possible. So I expect this is one of those things that's going to come to an end, at least for Brian, fairly soon.
But you may remember the charges that were brought were about RICO and conspiracy, and you need more than one. What about Reckless Ben? Well, here things are complicated. Although the defamation suit may be frivolous or not, depending on what all he actually said, the criminal charges probably aren't. So this case is a reminder that just because you believe your cause is righteous doesn't mean you get to break the law in promoting it. So I would expect the charges will eventually be dropped, but this is another example of YouTubers and creators that, yes, there's the First Amendment, but you can't break the law chasing content. You can't harass. You can't break into people's houses. This happens because of YouTube content creators trying to look for content. You can't stalk people. You can't send people to go stalk people. So this is a stark reminder of that.
So let's talk about exactly what he did and whether or not this rises to the level of some sort of criminal charge, which I think, honestly, is the closest question in the case. I mean, Brian Mansell is not even close. Reckless Ben, as Alice said, he's in the long line of YouTubers who, I don't know, we'll see. They were seeing some of this in the Nancy Guthrie case, with people getting arrested down there for stuff. Okay, so his actions were primarily directed at a man named Joshua Johnson, who is a man from Utah who actually took over this Salem franchise along with another person after the controversy began. It's not even clear that he has really any involvement in this, except he's kind of the man left holding the bag and kind of in the middle between the old franchise owner and corporate, who seems to be making a lot of decisions. Okay, so this all started on March 8th of this year. Police say that someone wearing a baseball cap with a UPS logo taped onto it, real master of disguise here, delivered a suspicious package to Johnson's door. The package...
Bombs?
Rubber...
Was it bombs?
No. Wasn't bombs. Wasn't anthrax, smallpox, none of that. Rubber ducks.
How dare they?
Rubber ducks. So, he delivers this package of rubber ducks. Shortly thereafter, he's actually stopped by the police in a vehicle. And he said, yes, he delivered the package of rubber ducks to get Johnson to sign something on his phone. So he goes, he's like, I have a package for you. My very convincing UPS hat.
With a UPS sticker on his hat.
Will you sign this for me? Here, you have to sign for this package. And it's a little unclear exactly why he wanted to do this. The police speculate this is part of a plan to create or forge a document using his signature, possibly to prevent Johnson from trespassing him from his property. So it's like, I have a signed agreement where it says I can be here, so he can't tell me to leave because I want to protest. This is essentially the police's theory. Little unclear exactly what's going on here. Just that it was a fake package to get his signature. So that happened on March 8th.
So the next day, on March 9th, there was a fake church contact visit. So the next day, police say that another man went to Johnson's door falsely claiming he was from a nearby church congregation and had been sent by Johnson's church leader. Police say they identified him as Christian Morgan and determined he acted at Reckless Ben's direction. According to the police chief's account, Schneider later admitted he sent Morgan because he believed the civil case required an attempt at verbal reconciliation. What?
Which I don't even understand what that means.
It's called a meet and confer. And you call someone up on it. You don't trick them into it.
I mean, it seems like this whole thing, I don't know. It's so weird. It's like he's trying to trick him into not being able to hold him accountable for any of the stuff he's doing. And it gets weirder. I mean, there's all these allegations flying around about Johnson accused Ben of having heroin, and Ben said that Johnson was selling drugs, and like all this other stuff's going around too. Not much of that has really made it to the police reports, but nevertheless, all very strange. So that's March 9th. So we have this March 8th, March 9th, March 10th. So Schneider and a woman were allegedly near Johnson's residence again. At this point, Johnson is familiar with Ben, and so as soon as he sees him, he calls the police. The woman's photographing the house, and the police report says that Schneider told officers he was there to serve legal papers, and that the woman with him was the process server. Now, police in the report, and I'm a little confused about when this exactly happened, because this is in the probable cause report, but it may have happened the next day, or it may have happened both days. A little unclear. Police said they found a sign across the street. It had Johnson's image on it with the accusation, I stole a dying man's life savings. And according to the police, Schneider admitted putting up the sign and said the purpose of that was to get Johnson to come outside. He wants him to come outside and I guess confront him. And he's got this woman. I expect what the woman's really there for is to film the confrontation between Johnson and Ben. But of course, instead, he calls the police.
So the next day, On March 11th, after Schneider had already been arrested once, police say a group returned and hung a sign on a neighbor's fence across from Johnson's home. The sign reportedly depicted Johnson holding cash over an elderly man in a hospital bed with the words, "I stole a dying man's life savings." Now, one of the people at the scene was allegedly on FaceTime with Schneider when police arrived. So again, this was a sign, but also meant to broadcast to the world.
So all this happens. In addition to this, we noted for you that they have their corporate headquarters in Provo. So there's a separate Provo misdemeanor case that's tied to earlier conduct down at the corporate office. According to KSL News, Schneider was charged in Provo Justice Court with disorderly conduct and criminal trespass based on the December 10th, 2025 incident at the corporate office. And KSL described his efforts at that point as including talking to employees, placing large banners about the theft over the company's sign, delivering an award for most Legos stolen, filing frivolous small claims lawsuits, and creating a satirical company called We Steal from Old People. So that's what was going on in Provo that's led to the Provo allegations. Total mess going on here. Absolute mess. I guess Ben would say he's just fighting for justice. He's just out there fighting for justice. He didn't even get his Lego stolen. But I feel like once the main matter is settled, which seems to be, it's going to happen pretty quickly, I would expect that everyone else involved is going to agree to drop various charges, to stop certain actions, and all go their separate ways. That's what's going to happen here. I don't feel like any of this is going to actually proceed. It shouldn't actually proceed to a trial or anything. Ben, like we said earlier, a lot of this stuff really toes the First Amendment line. I don't buy a lot of Ben's self-serving statements about what he was doing. I think most of this was absolutely targeted harassment. That's my opinion on it. But nevertheless, to a certain extent, harassment is protected. You can kind of harass people. What's one thing that's really interesting is Utah has this law against private property picketing. And it basically says you can't go to somebody's house and protest them. We're going to give people that protection. You want to protest their business? That's fine. You want to protest on the public street? That's fine. But you can't go down to somebody's house and protest them. I don't know if that's constitutional. I can imagine why I would want a law like that to exist, because I do think there probably should be some limits. But if you wanted to challenge that and you wanted to take it all the way to the top, you could do that. But is it really worth it in this case? I don't think so. So I expect this will all be resolved. That's my thoughts.
I think that's right. I think when you saw what happened with the capitulation to Menzel, that's exactly where this is headed. This is a wild case because this is a great example, again, of several things. There's so many lessons here, kids, about First Amendment and not actually breaking the law, chasing content if you are, in fact, a content creator. And what does that even mean if you're creating the content here? Harassment is still harassment. Stalking is still stalking. But also, I don't know, PR folks, if you're in PR or you're a legal advisor to a corporation, take note of this case and see what public perception can do as well to really bad judgment on these cases. I wish someone would have just sat back for a second and been like, can we? Should we? And those answers should have been no.
And every lawyer, and really every PR person too, one skill you have to have as a lawyer is you have to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and think about the way they see it. People use the term "my truth" all the time. Generally, I hate that because it's the truth is the truth. You don't have a truth. It's just the truth. Well, in the law, when it comes to things like defamation and property suits and contract law, you kind of do have a my truth. Ben's living his truth. He believes the corporate stole these things from him. Maybe he's wrong, but when it comes to things like defamation, that matters. It matters that that's his truth. And you have to be able to put yourself in his shoes and say, okay, how does he view this whole thing? Maybe we should take a step back here. You also have to be able to do some triage. Most corporations, counsel, have something called nuisance suits. They identify suits as nuisance suits, and they have a small amount of money they're willing to settle that for. Not every corporation does this, by the way. Walmart used to do that. Walmart used to settle every single lawsuit brought against it. And then at some point, somebody was like, people can just keep bringing lawsuits against us because they know we're going to settle. And then they just started fighting everything. And when they started fighting everything, the number of lawsuits really dropped. And they were able to reach some sort of equilibrium where they started settling the suits that had some value and then fighting the suits that didn't. But nevertheless, most corporations have some sort of nuisance. Like, this is just a nuisance. It's worth more for us to pay it off than to challenge it. Well, here you have a situation where the guy has a legitimate claim. Even if he's wrong, even if you think he's wrong, it's not frivolous. Just pay the man. And it's so funny that that's where they ended up. After all of this happened, they've ended up where, like, in this blog post, literally the head of the corporation is inviting him to come sit down with him, and they'll go through the spreadsheets and figure out exactly how much money he's owed, and they'll get him that money, and they'll have every Star Wars Lego that was ever made will be in the room with him, and they can take it too. I mean, that's essentially what we've got going on here. And all of this could have been handled just by, like, treating the guy with a little bit of customer
respect
service
and dignity.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this can't be a good reflection, or exactly like you said, on your ability to deal with consumers. Because essentially that's what he is, right? He's like your ultimate consumer. He loves this stuff so much so he sells it.
And it would be one thing if, like, this franchisee was your most beloved franchisee, a rock solid member of the corporate community, had been with you from the beginning, and she said to you, this man is lying. I would never do anything like this. And you as a corporation say, we're going to stand behind you. That'd be one thing. But the whole time they're doing this, they're saying this woman's a liar and she's stealing and everything else. And yet they still go after him like they do. I don't know. It's like the whole thing's just, it's crazy. And the reckless Ben thing, I don't know. We'll find out what the courts eventually say about him to the extent this goes anywhere, which I don't think it will. But, you do wonder if he hadn't caused this massive stink, would we be where we are now? I don't know. Maybe him doing what he did is the reason that Bricks and Minifigs is basically
capitulating to Mr. Menzel. I think probably. I mean, he certainly drew attention to the injustice that was happening. So, and that's kind of why, by the way, the First Amendment allows a level of harassment.
Now, he probably should have stuck to the Provo office. Like, he should have just, like, why he gets in with Johnson, leave that dude alone. Just keep pounding corporate in Provo. That's a much, I think, easier to defend than he's going to end up if this ever actually goes to court. And he's in a situation where the Utah courts are obviously predisposed to think that he's done something wrong. So, but anyways, I think it'll all be settled. I don't think this is going to end up. If this case goes to trial,
it's going to cost them way more money to keep fighting this. Yeah. And the damage is only going to get worse because the narrative is already set. It doesn't matter that they've capitulated Menzel. The damage has been done to their PR and to their reputation because it's so clear that they're only doing this because people called them out on being so unjust. So they've already won. They've already lost all of this, and they're only going to dig their hole deeper.
Imagine if you're the poor ADA, and you're like, God,
do I have to do this?
Do we really have to do this? I've got like a murder case and 3 armed robberies. Do I really have to prosecute this case?
Making cartoons about a guy stealing money from an old man. Here we go.
It's hilarious. But
it is.
Important to them, I'm sure.
It is. Wow. This has been a fun one in the sense that nobody died. And I think Menzel is getting more than what's due him, which is correct because he's been dragged through something when it should have ended this way in the first place for him. And maybe this will actually teach a bunch of content creators bad lessons. But remember, don't break the law, even if you're a content creator. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Brett, about this? Should we answer a question?
I don't think we should answer a question.
This has been fun. This has been a fun and frivolity. We might as well extend the fun and frivolity on Father's Day.
Let's do it. Let's see. Yeah, like I said, it was good to...
It's a palate cleanser, shall we say, from child murder.
We have a non-child murder case coming up on the prosecutors. So
look at us branching out.
All right, let's see. Okay, so this is from Casey Me. They say, has your worldview, professional, personal, relational, changed since becoming entrenched in the true crime and podcasting community? If so, how?
That's a very good question. My worldview hasn't changed, I think, because the work that we have done for our legal careers, I think we've seen a lot of the real world. So my worldview hasn't changed, but I have been heartened because I have felt that community is stronger than I originally thought. I thought this society was just going to be isolated. We're all going to be sad and alone forever. And I will say, being enmeshed in the true crime community, which is primed for a community being able to do good, like bringing attention to cases that may not otherwise have attention, changing public perception, and where you use your clicks for good or bad, like voting with your feet. I have seen so much good come out of that, where previously I had thought there was no hope, I guess, that everyone was just going to go their own way, that no one was going to care about the person next to them. And that is not the perception I have anymore because of my experience in kind of the true crime community through our angle.
Yeah, I mean, I have really been heartened by the true crime community in general and the community creators. It's one of the reasons I love CrimeCon, because when you do this, you do Twitter and Facebook and everything else. I mean, it can be really contentious, really angry people, very critical, just people you don't like and don't want to ever be around. Then you go to something like CrimeCon and it's just everybody's friendly and supportive and helpful, and everybody's trying to work together, and it's so victim focused, and it's just amazing. And every time we go to CrimeCon, we meet people that we eventually, we're going to work with and everything. Like we'd met them before, some ladies from the Black and Missing Foundation. We met them actually the first time in Houston when we went to the Othram site, and we were able to hang out with them. But then we had our table at the Clue Awards. There were several people there, including a gentleman whose sister had been murdered and really was the impetus for the creation of Black and Missing. And we've been talking with them, really excited to work with them, going to have them on the show, like that kind of thing. It's just so great, like being able to bring attention to this. I will say this, one thing that has changed in my worldview, I used to be a little bit more open to innocence claims. Like I would watch documentaries like everybody else, and I would think, man, this police railroaded that guy. He really should get another chance. The more we look at those cases, there absolutely are cases where people have been wrongly convicted, and we talk about those cases. But the vast majority of them we look at, it's just, there's so much evidence that gets left out of the documentaries and everything else. And so now I've become more skeptical. I've tried not to become, what's the word I'm looking for? Cynical. I'm trying not to become cynical, because I always want to have an open mind to those cases and give them a fair look. But I just am, and I think even if you listen to the podcast, going back to the beginning, you could probably notice a shift there. Like I'm just much more, I would say, healthily skeptical. Yes.
That's a really good way. I guess this isn't a worldview change, but my pattern and practice has changed. I consume a lot less true crime. Like I don't enjoy watching a lot of documentaries now, because having basically covered so many documentaries and read the real sources and seeing how misleading a lot of documentaries are, it has soured me to a lot of true crime coverage, because I now know more of how, I guess, storytelling takes precedence over truth, and it makes it less enjoyable for me. Where before I'd be like, I enjoy the next true crime or podcast episode as much as the next person, but now I'm like, but it's going to be a waste of my time, because I know that they're going to leave this, and this out, and then I'm going to read the trials transcript and then be mad that they left this out. So I just don't even want to watch it anymore. So that's not a worldview change, but that's what I consume now is a little bit different.
Yeah, and I used to have a view, and I often say this, and I don't know, I may still believe this, I'm not sure, that it was like, just listen to whatever you want to, just bring a critical mind, it's fine. But I'm more and more convinced that like there's just some stuff you shouldn't listen to it. You shouldn't give it your clicks and your support. And I don't know, like, especially recently, I feel like I have listened to some podcasts where It's not we just disagree. We view this differently. We think about the issue differently. And, you're saying this and I'm saying this and, okay, we don't agree. That's fine. Which is true of most podcasts that I listen to. Even, there's some podcasts which have not been very nice to us. And I feel that way about. Like, I don't have a lot of hostility to a lot of people, even the ones who've been hostile to us. But there's some recently I've listened to and I'm like, no, you're a liar. Like, you are just lying. Like, there is no way you believe that. Like, you are intentionally doing this to mislead your listeners. And so that bothers me because I think, as we've learned, I'm a very naive person. I want to believe the best in everyone.
You're a trusting person.
Yes. I want to believe the best in everyone. I really do. I want to think everybody is trying to get to the right place, even if they disagree with me. And it really, I don't know, it bothers me when I run into situations where I just don't think that's true. It really does. It really bothers me a lot. And I realize it shouldn't. But it does. I can't help myself. So
that was a good question. That was a
great question.
I love that. Thank you. You really made me think about it. Well, guys, this has been a fun night. Those of you who are fathers or have father figures in your life, I hope that you got to celebrate them. And if you haven't, there's still time. Send them a text, call them tonight. Because, Brett, I'm glad I know you. You are a great dad, and it's so clear your kids love you. And also to Mr. Alice, who might not be listening. I'm not sure, but he's a great dad, too. I'm glad we got to celebrate him today. Happy Father's Day to you all out there. And until next time, I'm Alice.
And I'm Brett.
And this is the Prosecutors Legal Briefs. Jokes aside, happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
One day.
Happy Father's Day to Mr. Alice as well.
Thank you. Not to me. Did you have a nice Father's Day? What'd you do?
You
left your children is what you did.
Yeah, I had an amazing Father's Day. It was great. Went up to my parents' place. Whole family was there. It was great. Kids are they're the youngest because I waited so long to have children. So they're like now my nephew is about to have a baby. So
that is a big gap.
Hello, and welcome to Pluto Phone. If you know the name of the movie you would like to see, just stream it for free on Pluto TV, where all your blockbuster favorites are landing all summer long. Catch Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy.
Fantastic.
The Matrix Trilogy.
Welcome to the real world.
Mean Girls.
Shut up.
Titanic.
I'm the king of the world.
And so much more. For showtimes, press nothing. They're free 24/7.
That is so fetch.
On Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.